everyone, and welcome to the BusinessTraining.com video series. Today we'll be going over a PR and marketing basic, making your news newsworthy. So first let's go over a definition of what newsworthy means. As a PR professional, part of your job is to make your news, or the news of the client you may be representing, interesting, value-adding, and relevant. These, among other qualities, help to make a story newsworthy. Reporters and journalists may really take into account these factors when deciding whether or not to run a story. So when creating your story, be sure to pay attention to its relevance, its timing, significance, proximity, and eminence. So first let's go over relevance. Relevance is a critical component of a story's newsworthiness, and it encompasses all of the tips that we'll talk about later here. If your story is irrelevant to the audience of the publication you are targeting, or even irrelevant for your own copy, like your own website, your story is unlikely to be featured. So do a little research, think about your company's news and goings on, and consider where to spend your efforts here. Relevance will also take into account things like events going inside the company, such as a change in position or a change in leadership. Think about the relevance and what it has to do with the community that you're targeting. The next is timing. If your company releases a product but waits days to send out a press release, your chances of getting covered by the publication can be hindered. Consumers are used to getting the latest news, especially with so many sources for news readily available to any one consumer. If your news is old, it is usually uninteresting to readers. Now, with so many sources like the internet, websites from your own company as well as other websites, newspapers, magazines, the news on TV, you can even get news via text message, you can get news through social media. With all of these outlets for news, it's really important to know that your news needs to be new news. Otherwise, consumers are going to move on to the next subject. So if you have something relevant, as we went over in the first slide, go ahead and get it out now, because if you don't, somebody else will. And that sort of follows to significance. How important is your story? Is it going to make an impact on the readers? Will it affect the community, consumers, stakeholders? This also has to do with relevance, like I mentioned. If the story has nothing to do with its targeted readers, it likely won't make it to print. Also consider the facts of the story. A change in the HR department may not be as significant as a changing of the company's CEO. Next is proximity. The closer to home a story takes place, the more relevant the story will be to readers. Thus, the story will be more newsworthy, of course. Consumers may care about national things when it comes to government, national debt, things like the BP oil spill. But when it comes to company changes that are close to home, they will take a greater interest in the story, because it will not only affect them personally, perhaps in the way business is done, but it will also affect the community, the way their children will be interacted with through this company, things like that. Next is eminence. Eminence is a noun. It's a position of great distinction or superiority, high rank or fame. It also means hill, but that's another definition. If your story involves a famous person or company, it will likely be newsworthy. That's not to say that the story doesn't need to be relevant as well, but a prominent figure in the story will usually help in its popularity and readability. Things with celebrities usually aren't relevant to anything, but they are usually newsworthy just because of the person that involves. But for example, in your company, if you are dealing with someone who is of a high stature and has a high rank, you may be more apt to get your story featured. Being newsworthy matters because the media still matters. Media relations are still an important part of PR, and that can be attributed to the above items here on the screen, which are magazines and newspapers have gone virtual, which means they're online. There are still hard copies being printed, though subscription rates and circulation of these publications have certainly gone down. Big names know that the place to migrate to is the internet, so they have. Every large print newspaper and magazine has a website, and you can not only find content and information there, but you can also share it, like on Business Week's Business Exchange, which I've referenced to in the past and in other videos, as a great place to share content. Secondly, people still find these sources credible. They've been running print publications offline for years, so why wouldn't their reputation follow them online? Getting an article posted in the New York Times or Time Magazine is still worth something to a brand, and that can be seen through the traffic they still receive online, the number of followers they have, and the still circulated publications that they continue to sell. Third, people still watch TV. Advertisements may not be effective anymore, but getting your product featured on Good Morning America or Oprah seems to be a top goal for media coverage. To get on these shows, you must have current relationships with the media that work there and also offer something newsworthy. And fourth, the media can help to cover and promote your events. These two things are possible to do in-house, but again, their credibility and reach can assist you when putting on an event. So sending out requests for coverage in a media alert really can't hurt, and chances are your event will need all the help it can get. Customers are busy, and with the bombardment of information we experience every day, having a reliable news source share your news can really be helpful. And lastly, do your homework. The newsworthiness of your story and news also relies on how the media contact that you contact sees your story. Take the time to get to know them, what they write, and what the publication they write for covers. Following from the previous slide on why being newsworthy matters, and to again reiterate, media relations is still important in today's online media world. Since that is the case, it is important to consider the reporter to whom you are pitching your story. If the story is newsworthy but not relevant to the reporter or journalist, or even the publication that you're pitching, there's very little chance that your story will be covered or published. So keep that in mind when selecting who to send a press release to or your story to. Though it is vital for you to have a good standing relationship with media contacts to get coverage, again remember that it is even more important to have something newsworthy to send their way. Ensure too that you target the right media by knowing who your target audience includes, and by knowing what each media contact covers, enjoys, writes about, etc. Anything untargeted is really spam, and that's really no way to run a campaign or to get coverage and support. It's also not the right way to build media relations. And having a great media relations background or having great media relationships that you can go to when you have a good story, or that they know that they can count on you for a good story, is really an important part of having a long-lasting, successful public relations run, whether you're working as a PR consultant or working in the PR department in a company. Even more importantly is knowing that PR and marketing are even more interrelated than they ever have been. So even if you work in the marketing department, your PR capabilities will also be utilized, because it's very important to know what you can do, to know how to do it throughout the company, and to really foster and build those relationships with people who can help propel your company and whom you can help with their own advancements. So when you build media relations, know that it's not just about you. You also need to offer something in order to get something. And when creating something that you hope to get published, know that your newsworthiness relies on so many other factors than what you think about your news. The only important opinion is that of the reader, the customer, the publication, etc. Doesn't matter what you think. As long as you capture the interest of your audience, you should do fine. So that sums up our overview of writing newsworthy news. If you have any questions, feel free to email me at ashley@businesstraining.com.